Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, we're going to be joined by Executive Director Mike Hendricks. He's with the Invisible Wounds Project, which is a great organization here in the state of Minnesota. And the timing to me is just perfect with all the issues that we have, both in the state of Minnesota and nationally, in regards to law enforcement, concerns about refunding, defunding, reform. Mike Hendricks, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Sheriff. It's wonderful what you're doing and helping spread the mission and letting people know that it's okay to not be okay.
Well, and you too. You guys have a great organization going. Tell us more about Invisible Wounds Project. Who started it and why? What motivated you guys to get to do this here in Minnesota?
Well, it was started in 2009 by Russ Haynes. So Russ was a dispatcher at the time, and he wanted a way to honor his father, who is a military vet. His father really enjoyed classic cars, and so he started what is Cruise for Troops. So that is a classic car show, a cruise throughout the county, and it's just grown and grown every year. And in 2017, Russ realized that there are so many more people that need help. He himself, being a dispatcher, knew that dispatchers were quite often the unsung heroes that never got closure to anything because their involvement ended as soon as the first responders showed up. And so he was dealing with some issues with that. Some of his partners were dealing with those issues. And so we grew into what is now Invisible Wounds Project, where we help military, law enforcement, fire, frontline medical staff, corrections, dispatch, and their families with mental health issues, PTSD, and suicide.
That's great. So the connection with dispatch is interesting because that's a group of heroes that I think are all too often forgotten. Being behind the mic, you never see them. They're the heroes you never see, you only hear. But yet they are the first responder. They're the first call. They're the first people on the call. I mean, they're the first people that get that information and are there to help the subject in need, as well as to make sure that first responders are out there. And with the dispatchers, for me, I think dispatch is so important, and the stress management and mental health is so important with dispatchers, because being on the road, having been a cop for 20 some years, when we're on the road, we get to take one call at a time. And if you're a dispatcher, you're taking every call. You know, granted, you got some agencies that have call takers, and they have the fire dispatchers and the police dispatchers and whatever the case may be. But in most, at least in Minnesota, in greater Minnesota, most of us have one or two dispatchers on. So they're doing everything. And that amount of stress is incredible. And I think people forget about that.
Absolutely. I was law enforcement for 12 years, and I don't know how many times dispatch, I don't want to say saved my butt, but they relayed information in such a way that it changed the way I was responding to the calls. And they prevented what could have been a tragic situation and made it very manageable. They're calm in times of crisis. And they're just, like you said, they're the unsung heroes. They're vital to what we do, and people don't recognize it, and they don't want that attention, but I feel they need that attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
They never get the closure of the calls as the first responders do. They know what's happening. Dispatch has no clue.
Right. Absolutely. No, I totally agree. So with Invisible Wounds Project, explain the different areas that you cover and the kind of services that you provide for first responders.
Absolutely. So we're not a one-stop shop. We understand that people's healing processes and journeys are unique to them as individuals. And we will work with our clients to find the best possible resource for them personally. If that's traditional therapy, we will provide payment to therapy centers until it is deemed, quote unquote, not critical. And then we'll let their insurance take over from there. We partner with a great nonprofit in the North Metro in Forest Lake. They are called Acres for Life.
Right.
They do traditional therapy. They can provide faith-based therapy, and they're an international leader in equine therapy, which is a very, very unique form of therapy where you have to be present. You can't be in your own head while you're out there with these 2-ton animals. And it's at first it sounded like mumbo jumbo to me, and then during my visits to that place I realized how magical it really is. And there was this one horse that just kept coming up to me. And one time it just got super emotional and I started crying, and
Oh, wow.
the horse put its head right on my chest, right over my heart. And we just stood there, and it was so powerful. But that's not for everybody.
Right.
So, we'll work with our clients, with our partners, to find out what is going to be the best help for them.
So what's the area that you cover?
We cover the entire state of Minnesota.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
Yes. Yep. So we recently just restructured our nonprofit. So I am now the director of Southern Minnesota, and Russ is taking over as director of Northern Minnesota. There's just so much work, and we are growing so fast. It was just too much for me to handle alone. So we decided to kind of split it up so I can focus on expanding our services south, and Russ can focus on moving it farther north.
So how have you seen, as far as the numbers or the officers or the first responders that you're helping, how have those numbers changed since the Floyd incident and the riots up in Minneapolis?
Oh, they've changed dramatically. So our first responders, they just can't take it anymore.
Right.
There's so many different factors that contribute to the mental wellness of being law enforcement. And as you well know, these people get into this because it's who they are. They have that distinction between right and wrong, and they want to protect the people that are doing right, and get either change behaviors or incarcerate the people that are doing wrong and making victims out of these people.
Right.
And it just seems like everything kind of flipped upside down. And I'm not saying Mr. Floyd deserved what he got. I'm not taking a stance on that whatsoever.
Yep.
But just the way that they're treated now and the brazenness of these criminals, you look at Minneapolis and their homicides have doubled.
Right.
And I just, a lot of these people just can't take it because they don't feel they're being supported, and they're putting their lives on the line every time they walk out that door.
Right. And the reality is, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, the amount of stress that these officers are under just on an everyday regular basis on their job is it's an incredible amount of stress. I mean, when you look at the average person deals with 1, 2, maybe 3 major traumas or crises in their life. And 3 is probably tops. Well, as a law enforcement officer, and you know it as well as I do, I mean, that could be a handful of times a week during an officer's schedule. And the amount of cumulative stress that builds up, at some point they got to deal with it. And some process it better than others, but it's important for us to make sure that we have an environment for these cops, or where for CLEOs anyway, for chiefs and sheriffs. I think it's really important that we develop a working environment where everybody knows it's okay not to be okay. That we want you to talk about these. If a case is bugging you or an incident's bugging you, you got to talk about it. Before, when I was hired, that's not what you did. You were a cop. This is what you signed up for. Suck it up. Take it, deal with it. Don't talk to anybody about it. Don't take it home. And we'll just do the same thing the next day. And there was no, mental health was never discussed back then. But I think you'd agree, especially with in light of a lot of the anti-law enforcement rhetoric, it's more important than ever now for us to make sure our cops are okay.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And fortunately, that mindset of you signed up for this job, you suck it up and you deal with it and you come back is slowly going away.
Right.
And I have to give a shout out to Sheriff Leslie from Dakota County Sheriff's Office here in Minnesota. He was one of the first leaders to really embrace our organization and support what we're doing. And I know Sheriff Hutchinson in Hennepin County is very open as well,
Right.
with their people and employee assistants. But there still is not that trust there with employer provided mental health care. Our heroes feel that they're going to get that stigma, that somehow their sessions are going to make it into their personnel file.
Right.
And, quite frankly, if you do this job, even fire, medics, emergency room staff, you do any of those jobs for any amount of time, it will change you. It will.
Absolutely will. There's no
So, and like you said, it's okay to not be okay. And it's normal to not be okay. If you were okay after seeing the stuff that you see over and over and over, that would have me more worried.
Right. No, absolutely. To me, that means you're not okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm curious with, obviously with all the issues we've had in Minnesota in regards to law enforcement, have you guys had any issues with some of these anti-law enforcement groups or the reform groups contacting you or talking to you about our cops?
Fortunately, no.
Okay.
We've had some banter back and forth on either Facebook Messenger or in the comments section when we give out certain opinions, and we try to label it as opinions, and then we try to back it up with where we resource that information from.
Right.
And some people just they don't see it. We try to keep it civil. We are non-political in nature at all. We don't play any political games. And so if we're putting facts out there, some people might not agree with it. And you know what? I'm open to conversation. If you have differing opinions, that's wonderful. But back it up with some resources where you got that information, and
Right.
we can have this civil discussion. And if we don't agree, we don't agree. But we have been lucky that we have not been targeted as an organization by any of these activist movements.
Okay, good. That is good to hear. So you and I met because of the Corey Slifko family. Now, September 26th is National Law Enforcement Suicide Awareness Day. And on the 26th, we're going to release Corey's story. And you and I met because of Corey and because of Katie, his wife. Tell me about the Slifko family and how Katie got involved with your organization.
Absolutely. So Katie's at a point in her life where she's ready to start processing some of the trauma that's associated with survivors of suicide. And so she reached out to a mutual friend of ours, saying, I have some ideas on how I want to make good of this tragedy. And she started throwing out these ideas to our friend Ashley. And Ashley is pretty involved with Invisible Wounds as well. She is actually our board chair. So Ashley and I started talking, and we realized that we could work with Katie to help her vision come to life. However that looked. And she was looking for a nonprofit that she could partner with to do this. So we met for dinner one night, and it was the first time I met Katie, and we had some really good conversations. And then all of a sudden, I'm just become a blubbering idiot, and I told my story. She is the only person that has ever heard my story in full.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Even my wife. I just haven't felt comfortable telling her my whole story.
Right.
And it just came out, and I believe that made a connection with Katie, because she got just a little bit of insight what may have been going through Corey's head in the moment that he took his life.
Right.
and we've built a very strong friendship. Her children are wonderful, wonderful children, and they're so strong and so open about everything that's happened. It's inspiring. I wish they didn't have to go through this because they're such wonderful people.
No, agreed.
But
Let's, with them, I think with Katie, and she and I have talked about this, how when I do line of duty death stories on the Officer Down, I kind of, my rule of thumb is really typically anything more current than probably 10 years can sometimes be way too fresh for those involved to even talk about it. Well, Corey's story is it's not even 2 years old. And Katie's out there doing this and trying to make a difference. And her kids are too. I think that, like you said, they're an amazing family. I'm excited to, my background, a little history with me. I knew Corey when Corey was in Rochester. Corey worked for a security company in Rochester. I knew him there and was friends with him. My dad, who was a retired law enforcement officer, also worked with Corey in Rochester, and they were friends. And then, for me, I grew up 2 blocks from Katie in the same town. So, I've got, a lot of connections on both sides, and man, they're amazing people. So his story is going to be super powerful on the 26th. So for law enforcement officers in Minnesota, now I'll share this. We had a chaplain that came down from Bloomington in 2020 to train our chaplains. We've got a chaplain program here in Dodge County. And one of the things that she told our chaplains was that she had spent most of that summer counseling officers who could accurately describe to her the taste of their gun barrel. I had never, ever heard that before. And we have 12 chaplains, and that room was silent. Nobody had ever heard anybody say anything like that before. And so knowing a lot of Minnesota officers are hurting, certainly with Brooklyn Center and with Minneapolis, and with all the reform issues and the anti-law enforcement issues. What message do you want to give our law enforcement officers in Minnesota who may be hurting right now that really need the help?
I just want to tell them that we're here. We provide our services without judgment, free of charge, and absolutely off the record. We keep 0 records of our clients. And if we happen to be using grant monies to provide these services, the provider that they're going to will assign them just a random number, letter, code that we can use for reporting purposes. We don't even know. We just get the code. We don't know who it's associated with.
Right.
And I think that's vital for these people to seek help, that they know that their information is not going to be shared. I can get a subpoena all day long. I just don't have the records to share.
Right.
So,
Right.
And it's very important that you seek out the help, however that help may look. We have people on our board that understand. Me, myself, as a law enforcement officer, I get it. I've been there. I've been in the darkest corners of my mind, and I struggle every day, but I'm coming out the other end. And I want our cops to know that it's okay.
Right.
You can get through it. You have that support. And same with medics and firefighters. We have medics and firefighters that they can reach out to. We have military members that they can reach out to. Just anybody, they'll listen to your story. They won't judge you. And we are here for you during your darkest times. You serve us selflessly every day. Let us serve you.
That's awesome. So we have listeners all over the country who listen to the podcast. I understand you service and provide the service for Minnesota. If somebody from out of state is looking for help, can they call or contact you to get some information or ideas on who they can reach out to in their state or their community?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even though we are based in Minnesota, if you call us from California, Texas.
Right.
You know, we will do what we can to find you resources in those communities. We have a toll-free 800 number. We have Facebook, the Instagram, we have, email, a website, multitude of ways for you to reach out to us. And then we can pair you with somebody in your area, hopefully,
Right.
or at least, make some recommendations. A lot of our board, we know heroes from multiple states that would be more than willing to help us out if need be. So
that's awesome. So the best place for them to find out more about your organization, where do they go?
I would tell people to visit www.iwproject.org. That is our website. Facebook has a lot of really good info on the events that we do, some of the outings that we've had where our clients say it's okay to post pictures and things like that. We're not very tech savvy on our end, so we don't have a lot of the hot new apps or whatever they may be. So I would say our website or Facebook would be the best way. And then our 800 number, it's 1-855-HELP-IWP, which is 435-7497.
That's awesome. Mike, I got to thank you. This is something that we really, really need here. Especially in light of everything that's going on both in Minnesota and nationally with law enforcement. Also, Mike's going to help us tell Corey's story when we release on the 26th, so you hear more about this great project then. So, Mike, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you for having this podcast. Thank you for giving us an outlet to spread our mission. And, with this partnership, I know we're going to save lives.
Absolutely. Hey, and everybody, if you're interested in more information about our podcast and the mission, check out our website at www.officerdonmemorialpodcast.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thanks for listening.